The first time Luca Moretti heard the nurse sing in Sicilian, every gun in the emergency room went still. Rain hammered the hospital windows like someone was trying to break in from the sky. The power had flickered twice in 10 minutes, making the fluorescent lights buzz above the trauma bay, washing everything in a cold, surgical glow. Elena Carter stood over the unconscious man on the gurney, with blood on her blue scrubs, both hands pressed against the wound beneath his ribs. "Pressure," she snapped. No one moved fast enough. Now, a young resident stumbled forward with gauze, his face pale. Around them, the ER had gone strangely quiet. Not empty, not calm, but afraid. The kind of silence that happened when people realized danger had followed someone through the automatic doors. 3 men in black suits stood near the entrance, soaked from the rain. They weren't family. They weren't police. Their eyes tracked every nurse, every doctor, every exit. One of them had a hand inside his jacket, Elena noticed. She also noticed the gold signet ring on the patient's hand. The expensive watch cracked at the glass, the scars across his knuckles. The way, even unconscious, he looked less like a wounded man and more like a threat, temporarily trapped inside a human body. "Name?" she asked. No one answered. She looked at the tallest man in black. I said, "What's his name?" His jaw tightened. "You don't need to know." Elena's hands pressed harder into the bleeding. "Then you don't need me to save him." The man stepped forward. Every doctor in the room froze. Elena didn't. She lifted her eyes, exhausted and furious, rainlight flashing blue across her face. "Take one more step, and I let him bleed on this table." The man stopped. For half a second, even the storm seemed to hold its breath. Then the wounded man's hand shot up and clamped around Elena's wrist. His eyes opened, dark, fevered, violent. The entire trauma bay changed around them. The men in black straightened like soldiers before a king. The resident dropped the gauze. Somewhere behind Elena, someone whispered, "Oh my God." The patient's grip was iron, but his voice came out rough and broken. "Don't let them touch you." Elena stared down at him, her pulse slamming against his fingers. She had treated gang members before, addicts, victims, liars, men who came in with bullet holes and fake names and left behind fear like smoke. But this man was different. He looked at her like he recognized something in her that she had spent her whole life hiding. "Sir, you need surgery," she said. His eyes moved to her mouth. Outside, thunder cracked. Then Elena heard it, a faint melody slipping through the chaos. At first, she thought it was the old woman in bed 4, delirious again. Then she realized the sound was coming from herself. She was singing, softly, instinctively, the way her grandmother used to sing when Elena was little and terrified during storms. A Sicilian lullaby she had not sung in years. A language she barely admitted she understood. A piece of bloodline buried under an American name, a hospital badge, and a lifetime of pretending she belonged nowhere dangerous. The words left her lips before she could stop them. The man beneath her hands went completely still. Not weak, not fading, still like a predator hearing a sound from the past. His fingers tightened around her wrist. The monitors beeped faster. Behind her, one of the armed men whispered something in Italian. Elena looked at him sharply. His face had gone white. The wounded man on the gurney slowly turned his head back to her. And for the first time since he had arrived bleeding into her hospital, Luca Moretti looked afraid. Not of death, of her. His voice dropped to a whisper only she could hear. "Who taught you that song?" Elena's throat closed. Because the answer was impossible. Because her grandmother had made her promise never to sing it in front of strangers. Because the last time Elena asked why, the old woman had crossed herself, locked every door in the house, and said one sentence that had haunted Elena for 20 years. "That song belongs to the Moretti dead. The trauma room doors burst open. A second group of men entered. Not hospital security, not police. Their coats were wet. Their guns were visible. And the man in front smiled when he saw Luca bleeding on the table. Then his eyes moved to Elena. The smile disappeared. "Well," he said softly. The dead girl had a daughter. Luca's hand tightened around Elena's wrist until it almost hurt. And in a voice full of blood, rage, and something terrifyingly protective, he whispered, "Run. Top of form. Bottom of form." Elena did not run. For one impossible second, she stood frozen between two worlds, the fluorescent brutality of the emergency room, and something older, darker, buried under a lullaby her grandmother had forbidden her to remember. The man at the doors smiled as if he had just found a ghost. "The dead girl had a daughter," he repeated. Luca Moretti's blood was warm beneath Elena's hands. His fingers locked around her wrist, not begging, not panicking, commanding. "Run," he whispered again. But Elena had spent her entire life learning not to run when people expected her to break. She pulled her wrist free, grabbed the trauma scissors from the tray, and cut straight through the black fabric of Luca's shirt. "I don't take orders from bleeding men," she said. The words were steady. Her hands were not. A low, amused sound came from the stranger near the doors. He was older than Luca by maybe 10 years, with silver at his temples, and a face too polished to belong in a room full of blood. His coat was soaked, but he wore the rain like a crown. Behind him, 2 men spread out slowly. The hospital staff backed away. One nurse started crying. The resident whispered, "Security's not answering." Elena did not look up. "Then call the police." The older man laughed softly. "Sweetheart, the police are outside making sure no one interrupts us." The monitors screamed as Luca's blood pressure dropped. Elena's chest tightened. Not because of the guns, not because of the men, because Luca's eyes were still on her, even half-conscious. He watched her like she was the only thing in the room worth protecting. "Elena," he said. Her hand faltered. She had never told him her name. A chill moved through her spine. "How do you know my name?" His jaw clenched with pain. "Because I know who you are." The older man's smile widened. "No, Luca. You know who she looks like. There's a difference." Elena snapped her head toward him. "Shut up." The room went silent. A few hours ago, Elena Carter had been invisible. That was how her day had started. Invisible. Exhausted. And running late. She had woken before sunrise in the tiny apartment above a closed bakery on the south side, the radiator knocking like a dying animal in the wall. The rain had already begun, tapping the window beside her bed in soft, nervous fingers. Her phone alarm screamed at 5:15. She lay there for 4 extra seconds, staring at the ceiling, letting her body remember she was still alive. Then she got up. There was no one to make coffee for. No one to complain about the cold floor. No one to ask why she had slept only 3 hours again. Just the apartment. Just the rain. Just the framed photograph on the windowsill of a woman with dark eyes and a secretive smile. Her grandmother, Rosalia. Elena touched the frame every morning. Not because she was sentimental, because it felt like checking a lock. "Morning, Nonna," she whispered. The apartment smelled faintly of lavender soap and old paper. Her grandmother's things still lived everywhere. Lace curtains, recipe cards, a cracked wooden rosary tucked behind the kitchen clock, a small brass music box Elena had never been able to make work. Rosalia had died 9 months ago. Elena still kept buying the tea she liked. She still kept the second chair at the kitchen table pulled out. She still caught herself turning to say things into rooms that had stopped answering. That morning, she ate toast standing over the sink while checking her bank app. $76. Rent due in 8 days. Her student loan payment already late. A warning email from the electric company sitting unopened. She closed the app before panic could climb into her throat. At the hospital, she became useful. That was the only place Elena understood how to exist. Blue scrubs, badge clipped to pocket, hair twisted up in a messy knot, coffee swallowed too fast, smile when patients needed softness, voice sharp when doctors needed sense. She knew how to stop bleeding. She knew how to calm a mother whose child could not breathe. She knew how to hold a dying stranger's hand without letting her own grief show. What she did not know was how to go home afterward and become a person. By noon she had been cursed at twice, vomited on once, and ignored by a surgeon who called her honey while stealing the chart from her hands. By 3, her supervisor reminded her she had picked up too many overtime shifts. "You're going to burn out, Elena." Elena had smiled. Burnout sounded luxurious. Burnout meant there had been something whole to burn. At 5, she found a voicemail from her landlord. At 6, a text from an unknown number appeared on her phone. "Stop asking about Rosalia." Elena stared at it in the supply closet until the automatic light clicked off above her. For months after her grandmother died, Elena had searched through old boxes, trying to understand the strange fragments Rosalia left behind. A photograph with half the faces cut out, a silver saint medal wrapped in black thread, letters written in Sicilian dialect, each one ending with the same name, Moretti. Every time Elena asked older relatives about it, doors closed, calls ended. People suddenly forgot English. Rosalia had raised Elena after her mother died young, but even as a child, Elena understood there were rooms inside her grandmother no one was allowed to enter. The song was one of them. Rosalia would sing it only during storms, softly, almost fearfully. When Elena asked what it meant, Rosalia would press a finger to her lips and say, "It is not for the living." When Elena asked who taught it to her, Rosalia's face hardened. A man who should have stayed dead. That was all, until the last night. Rosalia had been thin by then, swallowed by white sheets, her hands all bone and blue veins. The machines around her breathed and clicked. Elena sat beside her, refusing to cry because nurses knew the shape of death too well to pretend not to recognize it. Rosalia had opened her eyes just before midnight. "Elena," she whispered, "I'm here. If someone ever hears you sing that song." Her grandmother's fingers tightened weakly around hers. "Do not trust the man who freezes." Elena had leaned closer. "What man?" Rosalia's eyes filled with tears. "The one who remembers." Then she was gone before explaining anything. For 9 months, Elena told herself, grief made people dramatic. That old women carried old fears. That family secrets looked bigger in dim hospital rooms. Then Luca Moretti arrived on her gurney with 2 bullets in his body and death following him through the doors. Now, the impossible stood in front of her. The older man stepped closer. "Do you know what your grandmother cost us?" he asked. Elena kept pressure on Luca's wound. "I know she raised me. That's enough. She stole from kings. She cleaned houses. She hid. A bloodline. She made soup on Sundays. She carried a Moretti heir out of Sicily while men burned for it." Elena's breath caught. Luca's gaze sharpened through the pain. The older man noticed. "Oh," he said softly. "She really doesn't know." Elena hated the way he looked at her then. Not like a woman, not like a nurse. Like a document someone had finally recovered. A thing of value, a thing to be owned. Luca tried to sit up. The movement tore a sound from his throat, rough and furious. Blood soaked fresh through the bandage under Elena's hands. "Don't move," she snapped. "Elena," he said, voice low. The way he said her name made the room feel smaller, like a warning, like a vow. The older man lifted one hand. His men raised their guns. The bodyguards behind Luca responded instantly. Metal clicked from every direction. Hospital staff screamed and dropped to the floor. Elena stayed standing because Luca would die if she didn't. Her whole world narrowed to his blood, his breathing, his eyes. "You need an oar," she said. I need you alive. You don't know me." His mouth curved faintly. Not a smile. Something sadder. "I know the song." The older man's expression darkened. "And that," he said, "is why she leaves with me." Elena laughed once. It came out broken. "I'm sorry. Are we negotiating ownership of a nurse in the middle of a trauma bay?" The man tilted his head. "No, darling. We are correcting a mistake that should have died before you were born." Something cold moved through Elena. Not fear exactly. Recognition. All her life. Danger had felt familiar before it arrived. A shadow at the edge of childhood. Her grandmother locking windows during festivals. Sudden silence whenever certain names were spoken. The way Rosalia never let Elena walk home alone. The way she taught her to hide cash, memorize exits, and never let a man stand between her and a door. Elena had thought it was trauma. Maybe it was training. Luca's hand found hers again. This time he did not grip. He slid something into her palm. Small, cold, metal. His signet ring. Elena looked down. The black stone was slick with blood, engraved with a crest she had seen once before, pressed into red wax on the letters hidden beneath her grandmother's floorboards. Ihr Puls stopped. Luca's voice was barely sound. "When the lights go out," he whispered, "you run to the ambulance bay. Not the front, not the elevators. Ambulance bay." "What?" His eyes lifted past her shoulder. The older man smiled. Then the hospital plunged into darkness. For one breath, the world vanished. Screams tore through the trauma bay. Gunfire cracked like thunder inside the walls. A body slammed into a metal cart. Glass shattered. Someone shouted in Italian. Someone else cursed in English. Emergency lights flickered on, red and violent. Elena saw Luca rise from the gurney like a wounded animal refusing death. She saw one of his men take a bullet meant for him. She saw the older man moving toward her through the chaos, still smiling. Then Luca's arm wrapped around her waist, hard and bloody, pulling her behind him. His voice hit her ear, low and savage. "Now, Elena." And this time, when the Mafia boss told her to run, the entire hospital seemed to bleed around them. Elena ran because Luca Moretti shoved her through the smoke with one hand bleeding against her waist and a gun in the other. The emergency room behind them had become a nightmare of red lights and screams. Alarms shrieked from the walls. Sprinklers burst overhead, raining cold water over blood-slick floors. Nurses crawled behind overturned carts. A doctor pressed himself against a medicine cabinet with both hands over his mouth, too terrified to move. Elena's shoes slipped once. Luca caught her before she hit the ground. He should not have been standing. He should not have been conscious. He should not have been able to drag a grown woman through a hospital corridor while losing enough blood to paint the floor behind him. But Luca Moretti moved like pain was something that happened to other people. "Ambulance bay," he growled. "I know where it is. Then move faster." A bullet struck the wall beside her head. Elena flinched hard. Luca turned. His expression went empty. Not angry. Not panicked. Empty. That frightened her more than the gunfire. He fired once down the hallway without hesitation. Someone shouted. A body hit the floor somewhere beyond the smoke. Elena stared at him. He grabbed her hand again. "Do not look back. You just shot someone. He aimed at you. That is not medical reasoning." His eyes cut to hers, dark and burning beneath wet strands of black hair. "Then consider it personal." The words should have made her afraid of him. They did, but not in the way they should have. Fear moved through Elena with something else beneath it. Something electric, dangerous, humiliatingly alive. The same feeling she had when his hand closed around her wrist in the trauma bay. The same feeling she had when he heard the song and looked at her like the dead had spoken through her mouth. They reached the stairwell. Luca slammed his shoulder into the door and nearly collapsed from the impact. Elena caught him this time. His weight crushed into her for 1 second, hot and heavy, his breath breaking against her temple. She felt the hard muscle beneath his ruined shirt, the tremor he was trying to hide, the soaked bandages failing beneath her hands. "You're bleeding through," she said. "I noticed. You need surgery. I need you out of here. You keep saying that like I'm the patient. You became the target the second you sang." The stairwell door banged open above them. Voices. Men descending fast. Luca pushed Elena behind him. She looked at the gun in his hand, then at the spreading red beneath his ribs. "You can't fight like this." He did not look away from the stairs. "Watch me." The arrogance in his voice should have annoyed her. Instead, it made something twist low in her stomach, because he sounded completely certain he would burn down the hospital before letting anyone touch her. 3 men appeared on the landing above. The first one raised his weapon. Luca fired. The sound exploded in the concrete stairwell. Elena covered one ear with her shoulder, but she did not scream. Her body had moved beyond fear into a sharp, focused clarity. She could see everything. The angle of Luca's stance, the shake in his right arm, the sweat on his neck, the way his left hand pressed briefly into the wall to keep himself upright. The second man fired back. Luca shoved Elena down. The bullet cracked into the metal railing above them. Elena hit the steps hard, pain flashing through her knee. Luca dropped beside her, teeth clenched, blood dripping from his fingers. "Are you hit?" "No." His eyes scanned her anyway. Not casual, not pulita, possessive, like every inch of her had become his responsibility against her will. That look made her furious. It also made her breath catch. "Stop looking at me like that," she snapped. "Like what?" "Like I belong to whatever war you dragged through my ER. His jaw tightened. For 1 second, all the violence in him seemed to go silent. "You don't belong to my war," he said. "That is why I'm trying to get you out of it." The voices above grew louder. Elena grabbed his arm and pulled. "Then move." They stumbled down the stairs together. At the second-floor landing, Luca stopped suddenly. Elena almost crashed into his back. "What?" He held up one finger. Silence. Then she heard it. Footsteps below. They were trapped. Luca looked up, then down. Calculating. Bleeding. Cornered. Elena's mind raced through the hospital layout. Second floor, west stairwell, imaging department on the other side, service corridor past radiology, laundry chute near storage, staff-only exit behind the old ambulance elevator. She had worked here for 6 years. She knew the hospital's bones better than the men hunting her. "This way," she whispered. Luca looked at her. For once, she hissed, "Follow the nurse." She shoved open the second-floor door and pulled him into the dark corridor. The power outage had swallowed the hospital in fragments. Emergency strips glowed along the baseboards. Monitors beeped weakly behind closed patient rooms. Somewhere a baby cried. Somewhere another alarm had not stopped. Elena moved fast. Luca stayed close behind her. Too close, his presence a wall of heat and danger at her back. At radiology, they found Trevor. Elena stopped so abruptly Luca nearly walked into her. Trevor Malloy stood near the vending machines in his hospital security uniform, one hand on his radio, the other holding a keycard. He was not pointing a weapon. That made him worse. "Elena," he said, voice trembling. "Thank God." Relief almost touched her. Almost. Then she saw the envelope of cash sticking from his jacket pocket. Her stomach went cold. Trevor had worked hospital security for 2 years. He flirted with nurses, borrowed money he never paid back, and always smelled faintly of cheap cologne and cigarettes. Last month, he had asked Elena out 3 times. Last week he had cornered her near the parking lot and called her stuck up when she refused. Now his eyes kept darting behind her. Not at Luca, but Luca, toward the stairwell. Elena understood before he spoke. "You opened the service entrance," she said. Trevor swallowed. "I didn't know it was about you." Luca's hand tightened around the gun. Elena stepped in front of him quickly, not to protect Trevor, to stop Luca from killing him before she got answers. You let armed men into a hospital, Elena said. Trevor's face twisted. They said Moretti was coming. They said nobody innocent would get hurt. Elena laughed once, cold and disbelieving. You believed men with guns? They paid me 10 grand. Her mouth went dry. 10 grand. That was what betrayal cost? A little more than her overdue student loan payment. Less than 1 year of rent. Enough money to make a weak man unlock the door and turn a hospital into a battlefield. Trevor looked at Luca and went pale. Jesus, he whispered. You're actually him. Luca tilted his head. Unfortunately for you, Trevor backed up. Listen, I can help. I can get you out. There's a security van. No, Elena said. Both men looked at her. Her voice came out quieter now. More dangerous. You don't get to sell us out, then sell us directions. Trevor's shame curdled into anger. Don't act better than me, Elena. You walk around here like some saint. But look at you now. His eyes moved over Luca's blood on her scrubs, the signet ring clenched in her fist, the Mafia boss standing behind her like a shadow. Maybe you were always one of them. The words hit harder than she expected, because some ugly part of her wondered the same thing. Luca moved. Elena caught his wrist. Don't. Trevor saw that, and smiled with sudden cruelty. Oh, wow. His eyes glittered. He listens to you. Luca's voice dropped. Careful. Trevor should have stopped. Weak men rarely did, when a woman had humiliated them. You know what's funny? Trevor said, stepping closer despite the gun in Luca's hand. Everybody thought you were just sad. Poor Elena, with the dead grandma. Poor Elena working overtime because she's broke. Poor Elena eating vending machine crackers for dinner. Elena's face went still. Luca's eyes turned lethal. Trevor kept going, because he wanted to hurt her now. You know what the nurses say? They say you're pathetic. No boyfriend, no family, no life. Just you and that old woman's ghost. Elena felt each sentence land in places she never showed anyone. The empty apartment, the second chair, the tea bags, the photograph by the window. Trevor leaned in. Maybe these men came for you because even ghosts get tired of being alone. The hallway went silent, not because Trevor had won, because Luca Moretti had stopped breathing like a human being. He lowered the gun. That somehow made him more terrifying. Elena, he said softly, step aside. No, he does not get to speak to you like that. And you don't get to execute someone because my feelings are hurt. Luca's gaze did not leave Trevor. This is not about your feelings. Then what is it about? His eyes flicked to her. For one devastating second, the cold Mafia boss cracked, and something raw looked through. Respect. Elena had no answer. Trevor's radio hissed. A voice came through in Italian. Then the older man's smooth English followed. Mr. Malloy, if you are finished embarrassing yourself, bring her to the ambulance bay. Elena stared at the radio. Trevor froze. Luca smiled faintly. It was not a kind smile. They never intended to pay you twice, Luca said. Trevor's face collapsed. The radio crackled again. Bring the girl. Kill Moretti, if he is still standing. Trevor looked at Elena. Fear replaced arrogance. Elena, he whispered. I didn't know, but now she did. She knew Trevor had sold doors. She knew men with guns. Knew her grandmother's name. She knew Luca Moretti, knew the forbidden song, and she knew the man hunting them had just called her the girl, like she was cargo. Elena stepped forward and took Trevor's keycard from his shaking hand. Then she slapped him across the face. The sound cracked through the corridor. Trevor stumbled back, stunned. That, Elena said, voice shaking with fury, is for every nurse you thought was too tired to fight back. Luca watched her with an expression she could not read, something between approval and hunger. A distant shout echoed from the stairwell. No time. Elena grabbed Luca's hand and pulled him toward the service corridor. Behind them, Trevor sank against the wall, crying into his radio. They made it through radiology, past darkened imaging rooms and abandoned wheelchairs, into a narrow hallway that smelled of bleach and wet concrete. Luca's breathing grew rougher. Elena felt his steps falter. "Luca, I'm fine." "You're not." "I have been worse." "That is not reassuring." He stopped, one hand braced against the wall. His face had gone grey beneath the harsh emergency lights. His lips parted as he fought for air. Blood pulsed slowly through the bandage at his side. Too much, too fast. Elena's anger vanished. Nurse took over. She shoved him into an empty supply room and locked the door behind them. "What are you doing?" he demanded. "Saving your life. There is no time. There will be no time if you pass out, and I have to drag your arrogant body through a war zone." He gave her a dark look. She ignored it. The room was cramped, lined with shelves of gauze, antiseptic, gloves, saline, old blankets. Emergency light leaked under the door in a thin red strip. Outside, footsteps pounded somewhere far away. Elena tore open supplies with shaking hands. "Sit. No. Sit down, or I swear to God I will sedate you." His mouth twitched despite the pain. "You are very threatening for someone half my size." "I have access to needles." He sat. Elena knelt in front of him and peeled back the soaked bandage. The wound was worse than she hoped. Not immediately fatal, if treated. Very fatal if ignored. She pressed fresh gauze to his side. Luca hissed through his teeth but did not pull away. For the first time since the chaos began, they were close without movement, without gunfire, without people watching. Too close. His knees bracketed her body where she knelt. His blood stained her fingers. His breath brushed the loose strands of hair near her cheek. His eyes stayed on her face, not the wound. Elena focused harder on the gauze. "Stop staring. I am trying to understand you. Try blinking." He did not. She tightened the pressure. His jaw flexed. Good. Pain could humble him. A little. "You know my name," she said. "You know the song. You know something about my grandmother. Start talking. This is not the moment." She looked up at him. "Men are trying to kidnap me inside my own hospital. A security guard sold us out. You gave me your ring like I'm supposed to know what to do with it, and some psychopath just called me the dead girl's daughter." Her voice broke slightly on the last word, but she forced it steady. "This is exactly the moment." Luca looked at her for a long time. Outside, thunder rolled over the city. "Finally," he said, "your grandmother was not born Rosalia Carter." Elena's hands went still. She was Rosalia Bellanti. The name struck something deep, a name from the letters beneath the floorboards, a name Rosalia had scratched out in old documents. Luca continued, voice low. "She was promised to my grandfather's brother in Sicily, not for love, for power. Her family controlled roots, money, loyalties. Marriage would have joined two houses that had been killing each other for generations." Elena swallowed. "My grandmother cleaned houses. After she ran," Elena shook her head. "No, she ran with a child." The room seemed to tilt. Elena's fingers dug into the blood-soaked gauze. "My mother?" Luca's eyes softened almost imperceptibly. "No." Elena could not breathe. "Then who?" He opened his mouth. A crash sounded outside the supply room. Both of them turned. Voices passed close beyond the door. Elena held her breath. Luca lifted the gun silently. One shadow stopped outside. The door handle moved. Locked. A man cursed under his breath. Elena's heart slammed so hard it hurt. The handle rattled again. Luca reached for her, pulling her silently behind his body even though he could barely. She should have hated it. She should have pushed him away. Instead, she found herself gripping the back of his ruined shirt, listening to his heart beat beneath her fingers. The man outside moved on. Their silence lasted 5 seconds longer. Then Elena whispered. Who was the child? Luca turned his head just enough to look at her, and the answer in his eyes terrified her before he said it. The child Rosalia carried out of Sicily was my father. Elena went cold. Luca's voice dropped lower. And if the Belanti bloodline survived through your mother, then the men hunting you are not here because you are connected to the Morettis. He looked at the ring still clenched in her bloody hand. They are here because by old Sicilian law, Elena, a pounding fist struck the door. Once, twice. A voice on the other side laughed softly. Luca raised his gun. Elena stopped breathing. The voice outside spoke through the wood, smooth and pleased. Open the door, little queen. Luca's eyes locked on hers, and the rest of his sentence landed like a curse. They think you outrank me. The fist struck the supply room door again. Once, twice. Then, silence. Elena stood behind Luca Moretti with his blood drying between her fingers and his impossible words burning through her skull. They think you outrank me. For one wild second she almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was insane. She was 29 years old, behind on rent, wearing hospital shoes with a cracked sole, and there was a protein bar in her locker she had been saving for dinner. No one had ever treated her like power. No one had ever looked at her and seen a throne, except the men outside the door. And Luca. The voice returned, soft through the wood. Rosalia's little secret. All grown up. Luca raised his gun higher, but Elena saw the tremor in his arm. He was fading, fast. His skin had gone pale beneath the emergency light, his breathing tight and shallow. Blood had soaked through the second bandage. The Mafia boss looked like a king carved from violence, but kings bled like everyone else. Elena grabbed his wrist and pushed the gun down. His eyes cut to her. No, he mouthed. She ignored him. Who are you? She called through the door. Luca's jaw hardened. The man outside chuckled. She asks questions like Rosalia. Elena's stomach twisted. Answer me. My name is Dante Belanti. Luca's expression changed. It was small, almost nothing, but Elena felt it like the room temperature dropped 10 degrees. You know him, she whispered. Luca did not look away from the door. Everyone knows him. Dante Belanti. The name moved through Elena like a shadow from a dream she didn't remember having. She had seen Belanti written in old ink, folded into letters beneath her grandmother's floorboards. She had watched Rosalia's handshake once when a news anchor mentioned a federal trial in Sicily. She had heard her grandmother wake from nightmares, speaking that name like a prayer and a curse. Dante tapped the door gently, almost affectionately. I came to see whether the rumors were true. A nurse in Chicago, Rosalia's granddaughter, still alive, still carrying what she stole. I don't have anything of yours, Elena said. Another soft laugh. Oh, Elena, you have everything. Luca tried to stand. The effort nearly broke him. Elena caught him with both hands, forcing him back against the shelf. Stop, she hissed. You are going to die. His eyes burned into hers. If he takes you, dying will be the least of my failures. The words struck too deeply, too intimately. She did not know this man. He was dangerous, violent, a criminal bleeding inside a hospital supply room while armed men hunted them through the halls. But no one had ever said failure like that before, as if losing her would shame his soul. Outsil dentisaihed. Luca, I know you can hear me. You always were sentimental for things that could destroy you. Luca's face went cold. Go to hell. I have been. Your family decorated it beautifully. A pause. Then Dante's voice sharpened. Open the door, or I start killing hospital staff until she does. Elena went still. Luca's eyes snapped to hers. No, but Elena was already hearing it. Footsteps in the hallway. A muffled sob. Someone being dragged. Then a nurse screamed. Elena knew that voice. Maya, her friend from night shift. The only person at the hospital who remembered Elena liked black coffee with too much sugar. The only one who had covered for her after Rosalia's funeral, when Elena broke down in the medication room. Dante spoke calmly. "You have 5 seconds." Elena's hand flew to the lock. Luca grabbed her arm. "Don't. He'll kill her. He'll kill you. He already knows I'm here. He wants you alive. That gives us leverage." Elena stared at him, horrified. "You think like this naturally?" "I think like someone who has survived. Dante Belanti." Maya cried out again. Elena's face crumpled for half a second. Then it hardened. "I am not letting someone die because of a secret everyone knows except me." Luca's grip tightened. "Elena." His voice changed. Not command, not warning, plea. That was what stopped her. Not the gunfire, not the blood, not the threat outside. The way Luca Moretti said her name as if it was the last human thing left in him. She looked down at him, and for one strange, devastating second, she saw past the violence. She saw the exhaustion in his eyes, the grief buried under dominance, the terror he refused to name. Not fear of Dante, not fear of death, fear of repeating something, fear of losing another woman to an old war. "What happened to my grandmother?" she whispered. The hallway outside went silent, as if Dante himself had leaned closer to hear. Luca's throat worked. Then he said, "She saved my father from being murdered." Elena's hand fell slowly from the lock. Luca kept talking, his voice low and rough, every word costing him. "My grandfather had 2 sons. The older one was my uncle, Vittorio. The younger was my father, Matteo. Vittorio was cruel, ambitious, loved by men who feared him. Matteo was quiet, better with books than guns. He fell in love with Rosalia Belanti." Elena could not move. Rosalia was supposed to marry Vittorio. That marriage would have joined the Moretti and Belanti houses, ended a blood feud, made both families untouchable. "But she loved your father," Elena said. Luca nodded once, and when the families found out, his eyes darkened. They ordered them both erased. The room seemed to shrink around her. Outside the door, Dante's voice floated in, amused. "Tell her the rest, Luca. Tell her why her grandmother ran." Luca's jaw flexed. Elena looked between him and the door. "What rest?" Luca did not answer. Dante did. Rosalia was pregnant. The words entered Elena's body, like ice water. "No." "Oh, yes," Dante said. "A Belanti daughter carrying a Moretti child. Do you understand what that meant? Not romance, not scandal, war." Elena looked at Luca. His face confirmed it before he spoke. "That child was my father." Elena's lungs forgot how to work. Rosalia, her sweet, fierce, secretive grandmother, the woman who made lentil soup on Sundays and hid cash in flour tins, the woman who crossed herself before opening the mail, the woman who taught Elena to sing in Sicilian during storms. She had carried a Mafia heir across an ocean. "She never told me," Elena whispered. "She couldn't," Luca said. "If anyone knew, your family would have been hunted. My family was hunted anyway." A shadow passed through his eyes. Yes, the truth sat between them, unfinished. Elena felt it. A door inside her opening toward something terrible. "My mother," she said quietly. Luca looked away. That was answer enough. Elena's voice dropped. "Tell me, Elena, tell me." His eyes came back to hers, full of something that looked almost like regret. "Your mother did not die in a car accident. The hospital disappeared. The storm disappeared. Even Dante outside the door disappeared." Elena heard only the soft, mechanical hum of the emergency lights and the blood rushing in her ears. All her life, she had known one fact about her mother. Claire Carter died on a rainy road when Elena was 3. A truck lost control. Wrong place, wrong time. Rosalia never liked talking about it because grief was grief. That was the story. That had always been the story. No, Elena said. Luca's voice became very gentle. Too gentle. She was found in the car after it burned. Rosalia identified the body. She changed your last name, moved apartments, cut every tie she had left. Elena backed away from him. Her shoulder hit the shelf. Bottles rattled. No. Dante laughed softly outside. Poor girl. They dressed murder in paperwork and called it weather. Elena's eyes burned. Not tears. Something hotter. Something that felt less like grief and more like violence waking up in her blood. Who killed her? She asked. Luca did not answer fast enough. Dante did. Ask him who ordered the search for Rosalia's bloodline. Elena turned slowly back to Luca. His face was rigid. Who? She whispered. Luca's silence was worse than confession. Her stomach dropped. Moretti? She asked. His eyes closed briefly. Elena, was it your family? He opened his eyes. Yes. The word cut through her. For a moment, she saw him not as wounded or protective or dangerously beautiful. She saw his ring in her hand, his men in her hospital, his gun, his name, Moretti, the name on her grandmother's letters, the name tied to her mother's death, the name that had entered her life tonight, covered in blood, and dragged the past behind it. She threw the ring at his chest. It hit him and fell into his lap. Pain flashed across his face, sharper than the bullet wound. Your family killed my mother. My uncle did. Your family. I killed him for it. Elena Froze. The words hung in the cramped room, dark and final. Outside, even Dante stopped laughing. Luca's eyes never left hers. I was 16 when I found out. My father hid the truth from me because he thought he was protecting Rosalia. Protecting you. But Vittorio found the trail. He sent men to Chicago. Your mother died because she refused to tell them where Rosalia had hidden you. Elena's hand covered her mouth. Her mother, not absent, not unlucky, not a blurred photo in a box. Murdered because she protected Elena. Luca's voice roughened. When I learned what Vittorio had done, I put a knife through his throat at my father's funeral. Elena stared at him. This was not romance. This was not protection. This was a blood inheritance, reaching across generations and closing around her neck. Dante's voice returned, quieter now. And that, little queen, is why Luca Moretti became king. Not because he was the strongest, because he was the most haunted. Luca picked up the ring with blood-slick fingers. He held it out to Elena again. She did not take it. His expression did not change, but something in his eyes did. Something like acceptance. You should hate me, he said. I do. The words came out before she could soften them. Luca nodded once, but Elena hated that her voice shook. She hated that even while fury tore through her, she still saw him bleeding, still saw him protecting the door, still remembered his hand pulling her behind him when bullets started flying. She hated that grief and attraction could exist in the same body, hated that pain did not make the truth simple. Maya screamed again outside. Dante's patience ended. Enough family history. Open the door. Elena wiped her face with the back of her wrist. Her fingers came away wet. She did not know when the tears had started. Luca tried to stand again. This time, Elena did not stop him. She stepped forward, took the ring from his hand, and slid it onto her own finger. It was too big, heavy, cold, wrong. But the second the black stone touched her skin, Luca's eyes changed. So did the hallway outside. The men went silent. Dante inhaled sharply. Elena noticed. Power was not always loud. Sometimes it was a room realizing you had touched the thing everyone feared. Luca stared at her. What are you doing? Elena looked at the door. Mid-job. Elena. She grabbed a scalpel from the supply shelf and held it low against her wrist, hidden by her sleeve. Then she unlocked the door. Luca caught her shoulder, but she was already moving. The door opened. The hallway stood red and wet under emergency lights. Maya was on her knees with a gun pressed to her head, crying silently. Dante Belanti stood behind her, immaculate despite the chaos, his silver-streaked hair slick from rain, his expression bright with triumph. His eyes dropped to the ring on Elena's finger. For the first time, his smile faltered. Elena stepped into the hallway. Every gun turned toward her. Luca appeared behind her, like death barely standing. Dante looked from Luca to Elena and back again. "Well," he said softly, "there she is." Elena's voice did not tremble. "You wanted me alive." Dante's eyes gleamed. "Very much." "Then let her go." He tilted his head. "And if I don't?" Elena pressed the scalpel to her own wrist. Luca went completely still. Dante's smile vanished. The entire hallway froze around her. Now they were afraid. Not of Luca, of what she might do to the bloodline they had come to claim. Elena looked straight into Dante Belanti's eyes. "You said I have everything," she whispered. "Then you should already know what happens if I bleed out on this floor." Dante stared at her for one long, lethal second. Then he slowly removed the gun from Maya's head. "Rosalia taught you well," he said. Elena did not blink. "No," she said. "She taught me to survive men like you." Maya crawled away, sobbing. Luca reached for Elena, but before his fingers touched her, Dante's gaze shifted past them, toward the far end of the hall. A new sound rose beneath the storm. Engines, multiple, heavy, approaching fast. The windows at the end of the corridor flashed white with headlights. Dante's expression changed from triumph to rage. Luca looked almost relieved. Elena turned toward him. "What is that?" His mouth curved faintly despite the blood, despite the pain, despite the war closing in from every side. "My house," he said. The ambulance bay doors exploded inward. Black SUVs flooded the entrance, like a funeral procession made of steel. Men in dark coats stormed into the hospital with weapons drawn, moving with terrifying precision. At their center walked an older man with white hair, a cane, and eyes exactly like Luca's. Every Moretti soldier lowered their head. Dante Belanti took one step back. Luca's face went pale for a reason that had nothing to do with blood loss. Elena looked at the old man. The old man looked at the ring on her finger. Then he did something no one in that hallway expected. He bowed, not to Luca, to her, and in a voice cracked with age, grief, and recognition, he said, "Forgive us, Donna Elena. We have been searching for our queen for 26 years. The old man bowed so deeply his cane trembled against the hospital floor. For one breath, no one moved. Not Dante Belanti. Not the armed men. Not the nurses hiding behind overturned carts. Not Luca Moretti, who looked as if he had just been struck by something more brutal than a bullet. Elena stood in the red emergency light with Luca's ring heavy on her finger, and a scalpel still pressed against her own wrist. Donna Elena, Queen, 26 years. The words did not belong to her. They belonged to candlelit churches, marble floors, men whispering oaths in rooms where women became symbols and blood became law. Not to a broke ER nurse with mascara smudged under her eyes and someone else's blood drying down her arms. The old man lifted his head slowly. His face was carved by age and grief. White hair, sharp cheekbones, a black wool coat soaked at the shoulders from rain. His eyes were Luca's eyes, made older, colder, more haunted. When he looked at Elena, something in his expression broke. "You have Rosalia's eyes," he whispered. Elena's grip tightened on the scalpel. "Don't say her name like you loved her." The hallway went completely silent. Several Moretti soldiers shifted, offended. Luca did not. He stared at his father like he had seen a ghost crawl out of hell. The old man accepted Elena's words without flinching. "I did love her," he said. That was the first sin. Elena's throat burned. Dante gave a soft, poisonous laugh from several feet away. "Matteo Moretti," he said. Still dramatic after all these years. Matteo's gaze moved from Elena to Dante. The grief vanished. What remained was terrifying. "Dante Bellanti," he said quietly. "You came into my son's hospital room. You put a gun to a nurse's head. You threatened Rosalia's granddaughter." Dante smiled. "And you came crawling out of hiding for a girl who should not exist." "She exists," Matteo said. His eyes returned to Elena. "And that changes everything." Before Elena could ask what that meant, Luca swayed. His shoulder hit the wall. Elena forgot the ring, forgot the guns, forgot the old man who had just bowed to her like she was something holy. She grabbed Luca before he collapsed. "Help me," she snapped. No one moved fast enough. Elena looked at the nearest Moretti soldier. "Are you decorative? Or do you have hands?" The man blinked. Then 3 of them rushed forward. Luca tried to push them away. "Elena first," he growled. Elena pressed both hands to his wound. "You are about 2 minutes away from bleeding out, so this is the last time I'm going to say it nicely, shut up." For the first time, one of the Moretti men looked almost amused. Luca did not. His eyes stayed on Elena, with that same violent focus, even as his body failed him. "You don't go with Dante," he said. "I'm not going anywhere. You don't let my father—" His voice broke, not emotionally, physically. His knees buckled. Elena went down with him, catching his head before it hit the floor. "Luca!" His eyes fluttered, unfocused for half a second. The sight did something to her chest she hated. She was angry with him, angry with his name, angry with his blood-soaked history and the truth he had dragged into her life. His family had killed her mother. His family had hunted her grandmother. His world had turned her hospital into a battlefield. And still, when he looked weak in her arms, Elena felt fear tear through her like a blade. Matteo stepped closer. "Take him to the private surgical suite." Elena looked up sharply. "This hospital doesn't have a private surgical suite." Matteo's expression did not change. "It does for us." That sentence alone should have made her despise him. Maybe it did. But Luca's pulse was thready beneath her fingers. "Move him," Elena ordered. The Moretti soldiers lifted Luca with careful efficiency. He groaned once, low and rough, his fingers catching weakly around Elena's sleeve. "Don't leave," he whispered. There it was, again. Not an order, not dominance. Something worse. Need. Elena's anger cracked around it. "I'm here," she said before she could stop herself. Dante watched them with a strange smile. "You see it, Matteo?" he called. "It is happening again. A Bellanti woman softening for a Moretti man. How many graves will it take before your family learns?" Matteo's soldiers raised their weapons. Matteo lifted one hand. No one fired. His eyes stayed on Dante. "Leave my sight while I am still remembering Rosalia's mercy." Dante's smile thinned. "She had none. She spared you once." Dante leaned forward slightly, and for the first time his charm slipped. "She ruined me." "No," Matteo said. "She chose someone else. Men like you always mistake rejection for ruin." Dante's face hardened. Then his gaze moved to Elena. "We are not finished, little queen." Elena's voice came out cold. "Yes, we are." He smiled again. "No. We are only beginning." Then smoke burst across the hallway. Moretti soldiers shouted. Bodies moved. Glass shattered. By the time the smoke cleared, Dante was gone. Elena had no time to process it. Luca was being carried through a restricted corridor behind radiology, down a service elevator Elena had never seen opened. Matteo walked beside them, cane tapping softly against the floor, flanked by men who obeyed silence better than most people obeyed words. Elena followed because Luca's blood was still on her hands, because someone had to keep him alive. because somewhere between the trauma bay and the supply room, leaving him had stopped feeling like an option. The elevator descended below the hospital. Too far. Elena looked at Matteo. Where are we going? Somewhere safer. In the basement? In the part of the hospital the city does not admit exists. Elena stared at him. That is not comforting. No, Matteo said. But it is useful. The doors opened to a hidden medical wing. Elena stepped out and stopped. The corridor was bright, sterile, and impossibly modern. White walls, glass partitions, surgical lights glowing behind frosted doors, armed men stationed at every entrance. It was not a hospital department. It was a fortress disguised as medicine. Her stomach turned. How many people have you treated down here? She asked. Matteo did not answer. That many? She said. Enough. Luca was rushed into an operating room. Elena moved to follow. A surgeon in a grey scrub cap blocked her. You cannot come in. Elena looked him up and down. He had clean gloves, steady hands, and the calm arrogance of a man who thought a hidden Mafia ore made him special. I've been keeping him alive since he came through the doors, she said. Move. This is not an ER. No. It's an illegal surgical bunker under my workplace. Congratulations. Move. The surgeon glanced at Matteo. Matteo watched Elena carefully, as if measuring not her authority but her blood. Then he nodded. She stays. Inside the operating room, everything became motion. Elena scrubbed in with hands that would not stop remembering her mother. Your mother did not die in a car accident. She assisted because anger could wait, and hemorrhage could not. She passed instruments, counted sponges, called vitals, pressed suction where blood pooled dark and fast beneath surgical lights. Luca lay unconscious beneath the drapes, his face turned slightly toward her. Without the force of his stare, he looked younger, not harmless, never harmless, but human. A man made of wounds older than the ones they were repairing. The surgeon worked silently until the first bullet came out. It clinked into the metal tray. Elena stared at it. Such a small thing to almost end a life. Such a small thing to begin a war. The second bullet was deeper. Luca's pressure dropped. Monitors screamed. The surgeon cursed. Elena moved before anyone asked, hanging blood, adjusting the line, pressing gauze into the surgeon's hand. Clamp, she said. I know what I'm doing, he snapped. Then do it faster. The surgeon glared. Elena glared back. Luca's heart stuttered on the monitor. For one terrible second, the room paused at the edge of losing him. Elena leaned close to Luca's ear. She did not know why. Maybe because he had followed her voice once before. Maybe because the body remembered what the mind could not. Don't you dare, she whispered. You don't get to drag my dead into this. Make me care whether you live, and then disappear on an operating table. The monitor steadied. One beat, then another. The surgeon looked at her. Elena looked away. Irrigation, she said. 3 hours later, Luca was alive. Barely. The private recovery room looked nothing like the ER upstairs. It had warm lamps, dark wood, heavy curtains, and a window that should not exist underground but showed a digital view of rain falling over Chicago. Elena stood beside Luca's bed, exhausted beyond language. His chest rose and fell under clean white sheets. An IV fed into his arm. Monitors tracked his heart. His face had lost the grey edge of death, though his lashes cast dark shadows against his skin. He looked peaceful. It felt like a lie. Behind her, Matteo entered quietly. Elena did not turn. Does everyone in your family enter rooms like they own the air? She asked. Yes, he said. At least he was honest. He stopped beside her, leaving a respectful distance. You saved my son. I saved my patient. He would say there is no difference. He says a lot for a man who should be unconscious. Matteo's mouth softened, almost a smile. Then silence settled between them. Elena could feel questions pressing against her ribs. Too many. Too sharp. She kept her eyes on Luca. "Did you love my grandmother?" she asked. Matteo's breath changed. "Yes." "Did she love you?" A longer silence. "Yes." Elena closed her eyes. It should not have hurt. It did. Rosalia had belonged to herself in Elena's mind. Strong, private, untouchable. The idea of her young and in love with a man like Matteo Moretti felt like discovering a hidden room in a house she had lived in all her life. "Then why did she leave you?" Matteo's cane tapped once against the floor. "Because loving me made her a target." Convenient answer. "It is also true." Elena turned then. Her voice was quiet but sharp. "Your family killed my mother." Matteo's face seemed to age another 10 years. "Yes." "Did you know?" "No." "Did you suspect?" He did not answer. Elena laughed once, bitter and tired. "That's what powerful men do, right? You don't know. You don't ask. You let monsters carry out the ugly parts so your hands stay clean." Matteo accepted the blow. Luca would have fought back. Matteo simply looked at her, as if every word was deserved. "My hands have never been clean, Donna Elena. Don't call me that. What should I call you?" "Nothing. I'm not yours." "No," Matteo said. "You are not." The answer surprised her. He reached slowly into his coat and took out a small velvet pouch. "Elena Stifene." Matteo noticed and stopped. Then he placed it on the table between them. Rosalia left this with a priest in Palermo before she fled. It was meant for her child. When your mother died, the trail vanished. We recovered it last year. Elena stared at the pouch. She did not touch it. "What is it?" "Proof." "Of what?" "Your bloodline. Your inheritance. Your claim." "I don't want a claim." "Don't you, Dos?" The room seemed colder. Matteo's voice lowered. "The Berlanti family is divided. Dante controls the violent half. The old families, the ones that still respect blood law, have been waiting for Rosalia's line to reappear. If they recognize you, Dante loses legitimacy." Elena looked at him slowly. "So I'm not a queen. You are a threat." That sounded more believable. "And Luca?" Matteo's eyes moved to his son. "Luca has spent half his life killing men who came close to your shadow without knowing your face." Elena's breath caught despite herself. "What does that mean?" "It means when Rosalia disappeared, my son became obsessed with the debt our family owed her. He searched old records, bribed priests, interrogated men who had served Vittorio. When he found out your mother had been murdered, he executed everyone involved." Elena looked at Luca. Something in her chest tightened painfully. "He never found me? He found evidence of a child. No name, no face. Rosalia hid you well." "Good," Elena thought, then hated herself for wondering what would have happened if Luca had found her earlier. Matteo stepped closer to the pouch. "Dante will come again. He cannot let you live freely now. I can go to the FBI." Matteo's expression did not change. "You can, but Dante has men in law enforcement. So do I. So do families you have not heard of yet. There is no clean door out of this." Elena's hands curled into fists. "There is always a door." Matteo looked almost sad. Rosalia said the same thing. Before Elena could respond, Luca's monitor shifted. A breath. A movement. His fingers twitched against the sheet. Elena turned back to him. Luca's eyes opened slowly. Dark. Unfocused. Then finding her with terrifying speed. Elena. Her name came out rough from anesthesia and pain. "I'm here," she said. Matteo watched them both. Luca's gaze moved to his father. The room changed instantly. Not louder, colder. "You were supposed to stay away," Luca said. Matteo's jaw tightened. "Dante forced my hand. You brought her down here. She saved your life. You exposed her to the house. She was already exposed when she put your ring on." Luca tried to sit up. Elena pushed him back with one hand. Do not test me after surgery. He looked at her, even drugged, pale, and stitched together. His stare had weight. Then his eyes dropped to the ring still on her finger. Something dark and unreadable moved across his face. You should take that off. Elena lifted her chin. Why? Because men will die for what they think it means. Then maybe men should stop assigning meaning to women's hands. Matteo made a sound that might have been approval. Luca shot him a lethal look. Elena pulled the ring off and placed it on the bedside table. The absence of its weight made her feel strangely exposed. I want answers, she said. All of them. You'll have them, Luca said. No more half-truths. No more commands. No more deciding what protects me. His eyes held hers. And if the truth puts you in more danger, then at least the danger will have the decency to introduce itself. For a moment, his mouth curved faintly. Then his expression softened in a way that made her wish he had stayed cold. You sound like her. My grandmother? He nodded. Elena hated how badly she wanted him to keep talking. What was she like when you knew her? Luca's gaze flicked to Matteo. I didn't. Not really. I met her once. Elena went still. When? I was 11. My father took me to a church in Palermo after midnight. I didn't know why. There was a woman there in a black veil. She held my face and cried. His voice grew quieter. She gave me a medal of St. Rosalia and told me I had my father's eyes, but my mother's sadness. Elena's throat tightened. Did she know who you were? Yes. What else did she say? Luca looked at her, and the air between them changed. She told me if I ever found the girl with her song, I was to protect her from everyone. His eyes darkened, especially from myself. Elena could not speak. The rain on the fake window kept falling. For one impossible moment, the hidden medical room felt smaller than a heartbeat. Luca lay wounded between life and death. Matteo stood with ghosts behind his eyes, and Elena understood with sickening clarity that her grandmother had not left her a lullaby. She had left her a warning. The door opened. A young Moretti soldier stepped in, face tense. Matteo turned. What is it? The soldier looked at Elena first. That alone made Luca's expression sharpen. Sir, the soldier said. Dante released a message to the old families. Matteo's face hardened. What message? The soldier swallowed. He says Luca Moretti has taken the Belanti heir hostage and forced his ring onto her hand. Elena went cold. Luca closed his eyes briefly. Matteo gripped his cane. The soldier continued. Quieter now. He is calling for a tribunal. Elena looked between them. A what? No one answered fast enough. Luca opened his eyes. His voice was low, furious, and full of dread. An old-world judgment. 3 families. 1 claim. 1 witness. Elena felt the walls closing in. And what happens if I don't go? Matteo looked at her with terrible honesty. They will come here. Luca reached for her hand. This time, Elena let him. His fingers were warm, weak, and still, somehow commanding. Helena, he said, if you walk into that room, every man there will try to decide what you are. She looked down at his hand around hers, then at Matteo, then at the velvet pouch on the table. Her mother had died for silence. Her grandmother had lived inside fear. Elena had spent 29 years being hidden so well she had mistaken loneliness for safety. Not anymore. She pulled her hand from Luca's and picked up the ring. Luca's face went still. Elena. She slid it back onto her finger. This time, it did not feel like a mistake. It felt like a blade. Then I'll decide first, she said. Outside the hidden room, the hospital trembled with distant sirens, thunder, and the first footsteps of men gathering for war. Elena took the gun from a dead man. Not because Matteo gave it to her, not because any soldier lowered one into her palm, because when the chamber above the old cathedral erupted into chaos, when men began shouting in Italian and English and Sicilian, When the first Berlanti bullet shattered a candle sconce against the stone wall, Elena saw a Moretti soldier fall at her feet with his hand still wrapped around his weapon, and something inside her made a choice before fear could argue. She bent down, pried the gun from his fingers, and stood. The entire room seemed to notice at once. Matteo's voice cracked across the chamber. Elena, no. She looked at him through smoke, candlelight, and generations of lies. You lost the right to tell me no when you buried my life under secrets. His face tightened as if she had struck him. Maybe she had. Dante Berlanti stood near the far side of the marble table, watching her with careful fascination now. Not amusement, not charm. Calculation. He saw the gun in her hand. He saw the ring on her finger. He saw Rosalia's pendant at her throat, because Elena had put it on in the chaos without remembering when. Most of all, he saw the change in her. The nurse who had walked into the tribunal still hoped there was a door out of this world. The woman standing in front of him now understood the door had been burned down before she was born. You don't know how to use that, Dante said softly. Elena raised the gun. No, she said, but I know where to point it. For one suspended second, his eyes sharpened. Then gunfire exploded from the corridor above. The tribunal shattered. Men overturned the marble table. Candles fell and rolled across the stone floor. Serafina Vasto's guards pulled her behind a column as bullets screamed through the archway. Moretti's soldiers surged toward the stairs. Berlanti men answered from the darkness beyond the old crypt passage. The cathedral had become a war machine. Elena ran into it. A Moretti soldier caught her arm. Donna, you need cover. I need Luca. Orders are to extract you. Elena turned the gun on him. His eyes widened. I said I need Luca. The soldier froze, torn between obedience to the house and terror of the woman the house had just been forced to recognize. Matteo appeared behind him, cane gone now, one hand braced against the wall, the other holding a pistol with the calm familiarity of a man who had buried too many sons in advance. She goes with me, Matteo said. The soldier bowed his head. Elena did not thank him. They moved through the underground corridor as the cathedral shook above them. The passage smelled of wet stone, gunpowder, and old incense. Red emergency lamps threw blood-colored light over religious statues wrapped in plastic sheets. The Virgin Mary watched from a cracked alcove, while men with rifles rushed past her feet. Elena's heart pounded so hard it hurt. Luca was out there, wounded, stitched together, furious enough to tear himself apart. For her, the thought burned through the hatred she was trying to hold on to. She wanted to hate him cleanly, for the ring, for the danger, for the way his family name was tangled around her mother's murder. But memory betrayed her, his hand pushing her behind him in the stairwell, his voice whispering, I need you alive. His body bleeding because he kept turning himself into a shield. His eyes, when she put on his ring, not triumphant, not possessive, but afraid. Afraid of what the world would do to her. Afraid of what he might become trying to stop it. They reached the stairwell to the cathedral nave. A wounded man tumbled down the steps and landed hard at Elena's feet. Berlanti. Young, barely older than a teenager. Blood bubbled at the corner of his mouth as he tried to lift his gun. Elena aimed before thinking. His eyes met hers. They were terrified. Not evil, terrified. Her finger froze on the trigger. Matteo fired over her shoulder. The bullet struck the man's hand, sending the weapon skidding across the stone. The boy screamed and curled inward. Elena spun on Matteo. He was going to shoot you, Matteo said. He was a kid. In this world, children learn to carry guns before they learn why. That doesn't make it right. No, Matteo said, voice dark. It makes it ours. Elena hated the answer. She hated that she understood it. They climbed into the cathedral. The world above was worse. The abandoned nave had been stripped of worship, but not of grandeur. Broken, stained glass windows rose like wounded saints along the walls. Rain blew through shattered panes, turning the marble floor slick and reflective. Moonlight and muzzle flashes collided in the air. Men fought between pews as if the church itself had become a battlefield waiting decades for permission. Then Elena saw him. Luca. He stood near the central aisle beneath a broken statue of Saint Michael, one hand pressed against his bandaged side, the other holding a gun low and steady. He had torn open his stitches. Blood spread dark beneath his black coat. 3 Belanti men lay on the floor around him. Another circled from his left. Luca did not see him. Elena did. Her body moved before her mind caught up. Luca. He turned at the sound of her voice. The Belanti man raised his gun. Elena fired. The shot went wild. It struck the column inches from the man's face, exploding stone dust into his eyes. He staggered, blinded. Luca turned and shot him in the leg. The man dropped. Then Luca looked at Elena. Across the rain-lit nave, across smoke and blood and broken glass. Their eyes locked. His expression changed with a force that almost stopped the war around them. Relief, rage, fear, possession. Not the simple, cruel, kind men like Dante understood. Something far more dangerous. The kind that said he would drag himself out of death if her voice called him back. Elena, he roared. She ran toward him. Matteo's men tried to cover her. Bullets cracked over her head. Someone shouted for her to get down. She kept moving, because every second Luca remained standing. More blood left his body. She reached him at the foot of the altar. He grabbed her with his free arm and pulled her behind a stone column just as bullets tore through the pew where she had been. His body hit hers hard, trapping her between cold marble and heat. For 1 second, they were pressed so close she could feel his heart hammering against her chest. "What are you doing here?" he demanded. "Rescuing you." His eyes burned. "With a gun you don't know how to use?" "I scared a column. Very brave column." "You left the hospital after surgery. You went to a tribunal with Dante Belanti. You were unconscious when I made that decision. Clearly not unconscious enough." A bullet struck the column. Stone dust rained over Elena's hair. Luca covered her head with his hand automatically, bending over her even though the movement nearly made him collapse. Her anger cracked. "Luca," she whispered. His face tightened. "Don't. You're bleeding." "I know." "No. You're dying." His eyes flicked down to her mouth, then back to her eyes. "If I die, you run with my father." Something inside her snapped. She grabbed the front of his coat and pulled him lower, forcing him to look at her. "I am done being handed from one powerful man's plan to another." He went still. Elena's voice shook, but it did not break. "My grandmother hid me. Your father lied to protect me. Dante wants to claim me. The old families want to crown me or kill me, and you—" Her throat tightened. "You keep trying to die for me. Like that gives me freedom." Luca's expression changed. "Elena? No. You don't get to leave me with another ghost." The words landed between them harder than gunfire. For one breath, Luca looked stripped bare. The cold king vanished. The wounded man remained. "I don't know how to protect without destroying," he said quietly. Elena felt it then. The truth, beneath all his dominance. Luca Moretti had never been taught love as something gentle. He had inherited it as debt, violence, revenge, obsession, blood. Protection for him meant eliminating every threat until only silence remained. But Elena had lived in silence. She knew it was not the same as peace. "Then learn," she said. Behind them, Dante's voice rang through the nave. How touching. Luca's face went lethal. He pushed Elena behind him again, but this time she stepped beside him. Not behind, beside. Dante emerged through the smoke near the altar stairs, flanked by 5 men. Rain glittered on his coat. Blood marked one side of his face, though whether it was his or someone else's, Elena could not tell. He looked delighted. "Rosalia and Matteo under Churchstone," Dante said. Claire and Elio in secret, and now Luca and Elena bleeding at the altar. History has no imagination. Luca raised his gun. Dante's men raised theirs. Elena raised hers too. Dante's eyes glittered with amusement. Careful, little queen. That weapon has a temper. So do I. His smile deepened. Yes, I see that now. Around them, the firefight slowed as men realized the center of the battle had shifted. Matteo appeared at the edge of the aisle, with several Moretti soldiers. Serafina Vasto stood behind the broken pews, her black lace veil torn, a small pistol elegant in her gloved hand. The old families watched. Dante lifted his voice. Look at them. The Moretti king and the Belanti heir. He holds her like a shield and calls it love. Luca's finger tightened on the trigger. Elena touched his wrist. Not to stop him, to steady him. Dante saw it. His expression hardened. Elena, ask yourself why he came tonight. Was it to save you? Or because a Moretti cannot tolerate losing possession of a Belanti woman twice? The words hit their mark. Elena felt Luca go still beside her. Dante continued, softer now. He will ruin you the way Matteo ruined Rosalia. Not because he hates you, because men like them love like occupation. First they protect, then they isolate. Then your life becomes a locked room with velvet walls. Elena looked at Luca. For once, he did not defend himself. That scared her more than denial. Because part of Dante's lie carried the edge of truth. Luca would lock the world outside if it kept her breathing. He would call it safety, maybe even love. Dante stepped closer. But I will not cage you, Elena. I will give you what belongs to you. Belanti men will kneel. Moretti men will answer. The old families will obey. You want justice for your mother? Stand with me. I will give you the names of every man who burned her car. Every judge paid to hide it. Every officer who signed the false report. Elena's breath caught. Luca looked at her sharply. Dante smiled because he saw the wound open. Yes, he whispered. There it is. The daughter. Not the queen. Not the nurse. The little girl whose mother was stolen. Elena's hand trembled around the gun. What do you know? I know where she was buried first. The words sliced through her. Elena stopped breathing. Luca's voice turned deadly quiet. Don't you? No. Let her hear it, Dante said. Claire did not die on that road. She was taken there after. Elena's vision blurred. Rain. Candle smoke. Luca's blood. Her mother's name. She begged. Dante continued, each word chosen with surgical cruelty. Not for herself. For you. Elena's finger tightened. Luca shifted closer. Don't listen to him. But she was listening because grief had teeth, and Dante knew exactly where to place his hand. She said Rosalia had already paid enough. She said the child knew nothing. She said if we let you live, she would disappear forever. Elena's voice came out broken. And you killed her anyway. Dante's smile faded. For the first time, the mask slipped, and beneath it was not elegance. It was hatred old enough to rot. My brother died for your mother, he said. My house fractured because of her. My bloodline weakened because women in your family keep mistaking betrayal for love. Elena stared at him. Then the final piece clicked into place. You didn't kill my mother because she hid me. Dante's eyes sharpened. You killed her because she loved your brother. Silence spread through the cathedral. Even the rain seemed to soften. Dante's mouth tightened. Elena stepped forward. Luca reached for her, but she pulled free, not rejecting him, choosing herself. You tell everyone this is about blood law, she said. Power, succession, family honor. But it's not. Dante's expression darkened. It has always been about men like you being unable to survive women choosing someone else. A murmur moved through the old families. Serafina Vasto's eyes gleamed. Dante raised his gun. Luca moved instantly, but Elena was faster in the one way no one expected. She did not shoot. She sang. The first note slipped into the cathedral like a ghost. Soft. Sicilian. Ancien. The same lullaby Rosalia had sung during storms. The same song that made Luca freeze in the emergency room. But here, beneath broken saints and armed men, it became something else. Not comfort. Summons. The older men along the walls went pale. Serafina lowered her gun. Matteo's face broke with grief. Luca stopped moving. Eyes locked on Elena, as if the song had reached into his chest and closed around his heart. Dante's face drained of color. "No," he whispered. Elena kept singing. Her voice shook at first, then strengthened. The melody filled the nave, threading through rain, smoke, candlelight, and blood. Men who had been ready to kill one another lowered their weapons inch by inch, not because the song was magic, but because memory was, because every old family in that room knew what Dante had tried to erase. Rosalia's song was not a lullaby. It was a mourning vow, a song sung only for murdered heirs, a song that named the dead when courts refused, a song that, under old Sicilian law, could be offered by blood to accuse a house before witnesses. Elena did not know the full meaning, but Dante did. So did Serafina. So did Matteo. And Luca, wounded and furious, understood one thing clearly enough. Elena had just accused Dante Belanti in front of every family that mattered. When the final note faded, the cathedral remained silent. Serafina stepped from behind the pews. Her voice carried through the nave. "Dante Belanti, before blood witnesses, you have been named." Dante's eyes burned. "She does not know what she sings." Serafina looked at Elena. "Do you accuse this man of killing Claire Rosalia Moretti and Elio Belanti?" Elena's throat ached. She looked at Dante, at the man who had turned her life into a hiding place before she could remember her mother's face. Then she looked at Luca. He stood barely upright, bleeding, shaking, but silent, letting her speak. Not for her. That mattered. Elena turned back to Serafina. "Yes," she said. "I accuse him." Dante smiled then. Slow. Terrible. "Then let old law answer. Old law." He grabbed the nearest candle stand and slammed it into the floor. The marble cracked. A hidden charge detonated beneath the altar. The explosion threw Elena backward. Luca caught her midair and took the impact against the stone steps. The world became soundless white. For several seconds, Elena knew only his arms around her and the crushing weight of falling dust. Then sound returned violently. Screams, gunfire, stone collapsing. The cathedral was coming down. Dante had planned this. If he could not win the tribunal, he would bury the witnesses. Luca groaned beneath her. Elena pushed herself up, ears ringing. Blood ran from a cut above his brow. His stitches had torn fully open. His face was twisted with pain, but his first words were not about himself. "Are you hurt?" Elena almost cried from fury. "You're impossible. Answer me." "No, I'm not hit." "Good." Then his eyes shifted past her. "Elena, move." She turned. Dante was walking through the dust with a gun raised at Luca. Not at her. At Luca. Time slowed. Elena saw Matteo fighting to reach them through collapsing debris. She saw Serafina's men dragging the old woman back. She saw Moretti and Belanti soldiers firing in panic as stone fell around them. She saw Luca trying to lift his gun, but his arm would not obey. And she understood Dante's final cruelty. He would not kill her first. He would kill the man who had become her choice, and make her live with another ghost. Elena picked up her fallen gun with both hands. Dante looked at her. For 1 second he smiled. He did not believe she would do it. Maybe yesterday she wouldn't have. Yesterday, Elena Carter saved lives. But tonight, she finally understood that saving one life sometimes meant stopping the man determined to destroy it. Dante fired. Elena fired too. Her bullet struck his shoulder. His shot went wide. grazing Luca's side instead of piercing his chest. Dante staggered back, shocked. Elena stood, shaking, gun still aimed at him. Luca stared at her like the world had split open. Dante touched the blood on his shoulder. Then he laughed. "You have Belanti hands after all." "No," Elena whispered. "I have my mother's." Dante's smile vanished. A beam cracked overhead. Matteo shouted Luca's name. The ceiling above the altar collapsed. Luca surged up with impossible strength and shoved Elena away. Stone crashed between them. Dust swallowed everything. Elena hit the floor hard. When she opened her eyes, she could not see him. "Luca!" No answer. She crawled through dust and broken glass, coughing, hands bleeding against shattered marble. "Luca!" A hand grabbed her ankle. "Don't." He was half buried under fallen stone, blood pouring from his shoulder, eyes wild with pain and rage. "Elena," he rasped. "Help me." She froze. For one moment, she saw him not as a monster but as a dying man trapped under rubble. The nurse in her moved. The daughter stopped her. Dante saw the battle in her face. His voice softened. "Your mother would not leave me." Elena knelt slowly beside him. "No," she said. "She probably wouldn't." Hope flickered in his eyes. Elena leaned closer. "But you killed her anyway." His expression changed. "Elena." She pulled her ankle free. Then she stood and walked away. Behind her, Dante screamed her name. Ahead, through dust and falling stone, she saw a black sleeve beneath a broken beam. "Luca." Elena ran to him. He was pinned under part of the collapsed altar, blood spreading beneath him, face pale, breath shallow. Still alive. Barely. His eyes opened when she touched his face. "You came back," he whispered. Elena's hands shook as she tried to move the stone. "Don't talk. I told you to run, and I told you I don't take orders from bleeding men." His mouth curved faintly. Then pain stole it. "Elena." "No." Her voice broke. "No last words. No tragic mafia nonsense. You are not allowed to become another ghost in my life." His eyes softened. "Even there. Even under stone. Even dying." "Elena," he whispered. "I think I loved you before I knew your face." The words destroyed her. Not because they were beautiful, because they were impossible and terrible, and exactly the kind of thing a man like Luca would say while bleeding beneath a ruined cathedral. She pressed her forehead to his. "Then survive long enough to say it when I'm not furious with you." A shadow fell over them. Matteo and 2 soldiers appeared through the dust. Together, they lifted the beam enough for Elena to drag Luca free. The moment his body cleared the rubble, he lost consciousness. Elena slapped his face lightly. "Luca, Luca, wake up." "Nothing." Matteo grabbed her shoulder. "We have to go. I need to stop the bleeding. The building is falling. He'll die. So will you." She turned on him, wild with grief and fury. "Then, help me carry him." For once, Matteo did not argue. They dragged Luca through the collapsing nave as fire climbed the curtains and rain poured through the broken roof. Behind them, Dante's screams faded beneath stone and thunder. Outside, the cathedral steps had become a battlefield under flashing headlights. Black SUVs burned in the rain. Men shouted orders. Sirens wailed somewhere far away, coming too late as always. Elena stumbled out, with Luca's blood on her hands and Rosalia's pendant against her chest. The moment the old families saw her carrying him, something changed. Weapons lowered, not all at once, not peacefully, but enough. Serafina Vasto emerged from the smoke, bruised but alive. She looked at Elena, then at Luca, then at the ring still on Elena's finger. "The accusation stands," she said. "Dante Belanti broke tribunal law. He attacked blood witnesses. His claim is void." Elena barely heard her. Luca's pulse fluttered beneath her fingers. "Weak. Too weak. I need a doctor," she screamed. No one moved fast enough. So Elena became the doctor. on the cathedral steps, in the rain, under the headlights of Mafia cars and the stare of every old family in Chicago. She tore open Luca's shirt and pressed both hands over his wound. "Stay with me," she ordered. His eyes remained closed. "Luca Moretti, do you hear me? You do not get to haunt me. You do not get to protect me all night and leave me with paperwork." Matteo knelt across from her, his face shattered. "He is losing too much. Then give blood. He needs a surgical team. He needs pressure first." A Moretti medic slid beside her with supplies. Elena took what she needed, without looking at him. The rain soaked her hair, her scrubs, her face. Blood mixed with water and ran down the cathedral steps in thin red rivers. Around her, men who had killed for power watched a nurse fight death with bare hands. And maybe that was the first real power any of them had seen all night. Luca's heartbeat faltered under her palm. The medic looked at the monitor and went pale. "No," Elena whispered. Then louder. "No." She leaned down close to Luca's ear, and because there was nothing else left to give him, Elena sang. Not the accusation, not the mourning vow, the lullaby. Softly at first, broken by rain and sobs, she refused to release. The song Rosalia had sung through storms. The song that belonged to the Moretti dead. The song that had frozen Luca the first time he heard it. Elena sang it now, not for the dead, but to drag one stubborn man back from them. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then Luca's fingers moved, weakly, against the wet stone. Elena stopped breathing. His eyelids fluttered. His lips parted. Barely sound, but enough. "Again," he whispered. Elena laughed and cried at the same time, pressing harder against his wound. "You arrogant bastard." His eyes opened a fraction. Even half dead, they found hers. "Your voice," he breathed, "is terrible." Elena choket on asup. Then Matteo laughed. A broken, impossible sound. Around them, the old families stood in silence as sirens finally reached the church. Elena bent over Luca, shielding him from the rain with her own body. But beyond the cathedral steps, beyond the burning cars, beyond the broken tribunal, a man crawled from a side exit beneath the collapsed stone. Dante Bellanti was alive, bleeding, ruined, smiling, and in his hand he held the birth record that proved Elena's claim. He vanished into the rain before anyone saw him, except one person, Serafina Vastu. Her eyes narrowed as the darkness swallowed him. Then she turned toward Elena, toward Luca gasping under her hands, toward Matteo kneeling like a broken king, and very quietly she whispered to one of her men, "Prepare the city. The queen has awakened, and Dante will not run alone." By sunrise, Chicago knew something had changed. Not officially. Officially, the abandoned cathedral fire was a gas explosion. Officially, the bodies removed from the rubble were unidentified trespassers. Officially, no Mafia tribunal had taken place beneath broken saints. No heir had sung an old Sicilian accusation in front of blood witnesses, and no dying king had been dragged back to life on church steps by a nurse with both hands buried in his wounds. But the city knew. It knew in the sudden silence of men who usually spoke too loudly in private clubs. It knew in the black SUVs parked outside hospitals, courthouses, funeral homes, and Italian bakeries before dawn. It knew in the way certain police captains stopped answering phones. It knew in the way old women in Little Italy lit candles under framed saints and whispered a name they had not dared say in decades. Donna Elena. Elena Carter heard none of it at first. She sat in the hidden medical wing beneath the hospital, still wearing blood-stained scrubs, Luca's ring on her finger, Rosalia's pendant at her throat, and an exhaustion so deep it felt like she had been buried alive and forced to claw her way back through generations of ghosts. Luca survived the second surgery. Barely. The surgeon had come out after 4 hours with his mask pulled down, and his arrogance finally gone. "He is alive," he said. Elena's knees gave out. Matteo caught her before she hit the floor. She hated that, but she let him hold her upright for 3 seconds, because there was no pride left in her body. Then she pushed him away. "I need to see him. He is sedated." I didn't ask if he was entertaining. The surgeon opened his mouth. Matteo simply said, "Let her in." No one blocked Elena after that. That was the first change. Inside Luca's recovery room, the lights were soft and dim, but Elena turned them brighter. She had seen enough shadows for one lifetime. Luca lay pale against white sheets, bandaged across his ribs, bruised at the jaw, a fresh cut stitched near his brow. Without his black coat, his gun, his men, his terrifying stillness, he looked almost like any other patient. Almost. His hand twitched when she came close. Even unconscious, he knew when she entered. Elena stood beside his bed for a long time. She wanted to be angry. She was angry. At Luca. At Matteo. At Rosalia. At her mother for being a story she could never finish. At herself, for caring whether the man in that bed opened his eyes again. But anger required energy. All Elena had left was truth. She took Luca's hand carefully. "You are not allowed to make me love you out of trauma," she whispered. The monitor beeped steadily. "You hear me? I know your type." Bleeding dramatically, whispering impossible things, looking wounded and dangerous under expensive lighting. His fingers moved faintly in hers. Elena swallowed hard. "I am still furious with you." Another faint movement, almost a squeeze. Her eyes burned. "And when you wake up, we are going to have a very serious conversation about boundaries, emotional honesty, and not using your body as a human shield every 8 minutes." The corner of his mouth barely shifted. Elena froze. "Luca?" His eyes opened slowly. Dark, heavy, drugged, alive. He looked at her for one long second, then rasped. 8 minutes is generous." Helena laughed before she could stop herself. It broke into something dangerously close to a sob. She covered her mouth. Luca's gaze sharpened despite the pain. "Don't cry. Don't tell me what to do. I beat. Break it." His mouth curved faintly. "I will try." The words were small, but for Luca Moretti, they felt like kneeling. Elena sat beside him, still holding his hand. For once, neither of them spoke. There was no gunfire, no tribunal, no men deciding her fate in candlelit rooms. Only the soft hum of machines and the strange intimacy of survival. Then Luca's eyes dropped to the ring on her finger. His expression changed. "You kept it on." Elena looked at the black stone. "I needed people to listen." And now, she slowly pulled it off. Luca watched. Unreadable. Elena placed it in his palm. Now they can learn to listen without it. His fingers closed around the ring. For a moment, pain moved across his face. Not physical. Something deeper. "Elena, I'm not rejecting you." He went still. She hated how quickly he hid the relief. She hated more that she saw it. "I'm rejecting the idea that I need your name on my hand to be powerful." Luca stared at her. Then, slowly, he nodded. "You don't." "No, I don't." His voice softened. "But you are powerful with it." Elena leaned closer. "I am powerful because my grandmother survived men who tried to own her, because my mother died protecting me, because I saved your life twice while everyone else was busy turning bloodlines into mythology." His eyes held hers. Then Luca whispered, 3 times. "What? You saved my life 3 times. Elena narrowed her eyes. "Do not flirt while medically fragile." "I am always medically fragile around you." Terrible line. I am sedated. Still terrible. For the first time, Luca Moretti smiled. Not cruel. Not dangerous. Not the faint shadow of a man, amused by violence. A real smile. Brief. Devastating. And Elena understood, with a fear deeper than anything Dante had caused, that the most dangerous version of Luca was not the Mafia boss with a gun. It was the wounded man learning how to be gentle. The door opened. Matteo entered. The smile vanished from Luca's face. Elena felt the room freeze. Father and son looked at each other across years of lies, grief, and blood debt. Matteo's cane tapped once. Dante escaped. Luca closed his eyes. Elena went still. Matteo's gaze shifted to her. He took the birth record. Elena stood. The exhaustion left her so quickly it scared her. He took my mother's proof? Yes. Luca tried to sit up. Elena pushed him down, without looking. No. Elena, try me. He stayed down. Matteo noticed. So did Elena. So did Luca. None of them commented. What does Dante want with it? Elena asked. Serafina Vasto entered behind Matteo, her black lace veil replaced by a clean silk scarf, a bruise darkening one cheek, elegance sharpened by survival. To rewrite what happened before anyone else can read it, she said. Elena turned. Serafina studied her with cool approval. Dante has already contacted the families loyal to him. He claims the birth record proves you are illegitimate, unstable, manipulated by Moretti influence, and responsible for the cathedral deaths. Elena laughed softly. That's impressive. I've been queen for 6 hours and already I'm blamed for architecture. Serafina's mouth twitched. Matteo did not smile. Dante will use the missing record to divide the families, he said. Without proof, your claim becomes a rumor again. Elena looked at Luca. His face had turned deadly pale, but his eyes were awake now, fully awake. The king, returning behind the patient. Where would he go? She asked. Serafina answered. To the men who need you discredited most. Judges, police, old Belanti loyalists. Anyone whose power depends on the feud continuing. Elena stared at the floor. For 29 years, she had wanted a normal life. Rent paid, quiet mornings, a locked door that meant safety. Maybe someone to come home to who did not carry a weapon or 1,000 dead names. That life had been taken before she knew enough to miss it. But something else had been taken too. Her mother's truth. Rosalia's sacrifice. Her own name. Elena lifted her head. Then we don't chase him quietly. Luca's gaze sharpened. Matteo narrowed his eyes. What do you mean? Elena looked at Serafina. You said, old law needs witnesses. Yes, then give me more witnesses. Serafina's expression changed. Slow interest. Elena? Luca said carefully. She looked at him. No, I haven't said anything. You were about to warn me that this is dangerous. It is. Everything is dangerous. At least this time I'm choosing the direction. The room went silent. Serafina stepped closer. What are you proposing? Elena's fingers closed around Rosalia's pendant. Dante wants to control the story, so we make the story bigger than him. By noon, Elena Carter walked into the lobby of Moretti House. It was not a house. It was a fortress wrapped in old money, a private estate hidden behind iron gates north of the city, all black stone, tall windows, rain-wet gardens, and armed men who lowered their eyes when Elena entered. She hated that part, but she used it. The main hall was filled with representatives from 8 families, men in tailored suits, women with diamonds and grief behind their eyes, lawyers, fixers, captains, widows, sons waiting to inherit violence they pretended was honor. Matteo stood to Elena's left, Serafina to her right. Luca had been forbidden from leaving the hospital bed, so naturally, he appeared at the top of the staircase 30 seconds after Elena entered, wearing black trousers, a white shirt open at the throat, and enough visible pain to make every doctor in the building furious. Elena turned slowly. Their eyes met across the hall. Her expression promised murder. His expression promised he knew. 2 Moretti soldiers hovered near him, clearly terrified of both Luca collapsing and Elena noticing they had failed to stop him. Too late, she noticed. Luca descended the staircase one step at a time, face unreadable, one hand on the railing, the other pressed briefly to his side when he thought no one was watching. Everyone was watching, especially Elena. He reached the bottom and stopped beside her. She spoke through her teeth. "You were told to rest. I am standing. That is not rest. It is quieter than lying down. I am going to sedate you myself." "Later." Serafina coughed delicately. Matteo looked at the ceiling as if asking Rosalia for patience. The hall waited. Elena turned away from Luca before concern softened her. She faced the families. For a moment, the weight of the room pressed against her throat. These were people who had ordered deaths over insults. Men who could buy judges. Women who could end bloodlines with a phone call. Every gaze measured her, tested her. Some saw a nurse playing dress-up in a war she did not understand. Good. Let them underestimate her. Elena stepped forward. "My name is Elena Carter." No one breathed. Not Donna Elena. Not Little Queen. Not Belanti heir. Not Moretti blood. Dante was not there, but she could feel his lie in the room. "I am the daughter of Claire Carter, born Claire Rosalia Moretti. I am the granddaughter of Rosalia Belanti Moretti, who survived because men like you confused cruelty with strength." A few faces hardened. Elena kept going. "Last night, Dante Belanti tried to abduct me from a hospital. He threatened a nurse. He attacked a tribunal. He collapsed a cathedral on blood witnesses. He escaped with a document proving my mother's name, because he believes power belongs to whoever controls the record." She paused, then lifted her chin. "He is wrong." At her signal, Matteo nodded. A projector screen descended at the far end of the hall. Photographs appeared. Rosalia and Matteo outside the Sicilian church. The pendant, the marriage contract, the birth record. Dante had taken the original. He had not known Elena photographed everything in the surgical recovery room while waiting for Luca to wake up. A nurse learned documentation saved lives. Sometimes it destroyed monsters too. The room erupted. Men stood. Women whispered. Dante's loyalists shouted fraud. Serafina raised one hand. Silence returned with impressive speed. Elena looked directly at the loudest man. "You can call it fake. You can call me manipulated. You can say Luca Moretti put words in my mouth, a ring on my hand, a crown on my head." She stepped closer. "But you all know the song." The hall went dead quiet. Elena began to sing. Softly. Not the lullaby. Not the comfort song that pulled Luca back from death. The accusation. The mourning vow. The Sicilian notes moved through Moretti House like a blade drawn slowly from velvet. Older faces paled. Several men lowered their eyes. A woman in pearls crossed herself. Luca stood beside Elena, completely still. Not because he froze this time, because he understood. This was not fear. This was Elena taking the weapon her grandmother had hidden inside tenderness and turning it toward the men who built empires on silence. When the song ended, Serafina spoke. "Blood has named Dante Belanti before witnesses." Matteo followed. "Moretti House recognizes Elena Carter as protected blood and independent claimant. She belongs to no man's hand." Elena glanced at Luca. His eyes were on her, dark and proud and aching. Then another voice rose from the back, an older Belanti widow dressed in grey. "My husband died for Dante's lies." She stepped forward and removed a Belanti pin from her coat, then placed it on the floor before Elena. "I recognize Rosalia's blood." One by one, others followed. Not all. Enough. Pins. Rings. Family tokens. Placed at Elena's feet not as worship, but surrender. Dante's power cracked in a room where he was not present, and Elena realized revenge did not always look like blood. Sometimes it looked like truth finally spoken in public. The doors burst open. A young man stumbled in, soaked from rain, face split with panic. "Dante broadcast a message," he said. Every phone in the room began vibrating at once. Matteo checked his. Serafina checked hers. Luca did not. He watched Elena. Matteo's face hardened. He says he will trade the original birth record. Elena's skin went cold. For what? The young man swallowed. For you. The hall erupted again. Luca stepped forward, voice like winter. No. Elena looked at the screen where her mother's name still glowed. What happens if he destroys it? Serafina answered quietly. The copies help, but the original carries blood seals, witness marks, priest notation. Without it, some families will keep doubting. And if I go? Luca turned to her sharply. No. She looked at him. This time he stopped himself. The entire hall seemed to notice. His jaw tightened with the force of swallowing a command. Elena saw it. The effort, the love, underneath the instinct, the terror, underneath the love. She stepped closer to him, lowering her voice so only he could hear. I am not going to hand myself to Dante. Then what are you doing? Ending this. Elena. He wants me to arrive afraid. Alone. Usable. She looked around the hall at the gathered families. So I won't. Luca's eyes searched hers. What do you need? Not no. Not don't. What do you need? The question did more damage to her heart than any vow could have. Elena reached for his hand. Only once. Briefly. Stand beside me. He looked at their joined hands. Then, at her. Always. The exchange was set for midnight at Union Station. Dante chose the old platforms below, abandoned tracks where lights flickered and the city rumbled overhead like a sleeping beast. He expected Elena to come guarded. He expected Luca to come wounded and reckless. He expected Matteo to bring soldiers. He did not expect 8 families to arrive in silence across every entrance. He did not expect Serafina Vasto to sit in the station cafe above with 3 judges, 2 retired federal agents, and every document Elena had copied. He did not expect the young Belanti men, tired of dying for his pride, to turn their guns away when Elena walked down the platform. And he did not expect Elena to arrive wearing blue scrubs beneath a black coat. Not a gown, not a crown, not a Mafia widow's costume. A nurse. The thing she had been before any of them gave her names. The thing she remained. Luca walked beside her, pale but upright armed men shadowing them at a careful distance. Matteo waited behind. Serafina's people controlled the exits. Dante stood under a flickering platform light with the original birth record in one hand and a gun in the other. His shoulder was bandaged poorly. His smile was worse. You came, he said. Elena stopped 10 feet away. No. You were surrounded, and I walked in last. His smile faltered. Luca's mouth almost curved. Dante lifted the document. 1 match, he said, and your little revolution becomes a rumor. Elena looked at the paper. Her mother's proof. Rosalia's truth. 26 years of silence in one fragile record. Then she looked back at Dante. You still think this is about paper? His eyes narrowed. It is about legitimacy. No. It's about you needing women dead, hidden, or obedient, so your world makes sense. Dante's gun shifted toward Luca. Luca did not move. Elena veered. She stepped between them. Dante laughed. Still protecting him? No, Elena said. Stopping you from proving my point too easily. Behind Dante, one of his own men lowered his weapon. Then another. Dante sensed it. His face tightened. What have you done? Elena's voice carried across the platform. I told them the truth. Your brother didn't betray you. He loved my mother. My mother didn't weaken your house. You did. Everybody, every lie. Every war you blamed on love was your pride rotting from the inside. Dante looked past her, at the Belanti men now refusing his command. Rage broke across his face. You think they will follow you? No, Elena said. I think they're tired of following you. For 1 second, Dante became exactly what he was. Not a king, not a strategist. A bitter man standing at the end of his own myth. He struck the match. Luca moved. Elena did too. But the gunshot came from above. Clean. Precisi. Dantes händjagel. The match fell, extinguished on the wet platform. The document fluttered from his fingers. Serafina Vasto stood on the upper walkway, pistol in hand, expression calm. Old law allows intervention when a coward threatens blood record, she called down. Dante roared and raised his gun toward Elena. Luca fired once. Dante staggered. Not dead. Disabled. On his knees. His gun skidded across the concrete. Silence swallowed the platform. Elena walked forward and picked up the birth record. Her hands shook only after it was safe. Dante looked up at her, bleeding, humiliated, still trying to hate her into fear. "You'll become like us," he rasped. "All heirs do." Elena crouched in front of him. "No," she said quietly. "That's what frightens you." His eyes burned. "I won't kill you," she said. "I won't bury you in a basement. I won't erase your name from records or call your death an accident." She leaned closer. "I'm going to let you live long enough to watch every lie you built turn against you." Dante's breathing turned ragged. Behind Elena, federal agents came down the stairs with Serafina's lawyers and Matteo's evidence. Not clean justice. Not pure justice. But public enough that Dante could not simply vanish into legend. For men like him, exposure was its own kind of execution. As they cuffed him, Dante looked at Luca. "Your father ruined Rosalia," he spat. Luca's voice was quiet. "No, men like you did." Then Dante looked at Elena one last time. She did not look away. That was how he lost. Not when the bullet struck. Not when the cuffs closed. When he realized she was no longer afraid of being seen. By dawn, the families had split. Dante's loyalists scattered or surrendered. The Belanti house fractured, then reformed under a council Serafina forced into place with Elena's support. The Morettis retained power, but not unquestioned power. Old debts were reopened. Names of murdered women were spoken aloud. False reports surfaced. Paid officers disappeared from their posts before investigators could find them. The city did not become clean, but something rotten had been exposed to light, and Elena learned that power did not have to be inherited the way men handed it down. It could be rewritten. 3 days later, she returned to the ER. Everyone stared. Maya cried when she saw her. The resident dropped a chart. Trevor Malloy had vanished into protective custody after giving evidence against Dante's bribery network, though Elena suspected he would spend the rest of his life looking over his shoulder and still consider it mercy. Elena clipped her badge to her scrubs. Samma name, Elena Carter. Not Moretti. Not Belanti. Carter. Her grandmother's chosen shield. Her mother's hidden bridge. Her own decision. At noon, a delivery arrived at the nurse's station. Not roses. Not diamonds. Not something embarrassing and expensive enough to announce Luca Moretti's emotional limitations. It was a new coffee machine for the break room, industrial grade, with a note written in severe black ink. For the night shift. No one should drink vending machine coffee while saving lives. No signature. None needed. Maya looked at Elena. Elena tried not to smile. Failed. That evening, she found Luca waiting outside the hospital under the covered entrance, leaning against a black SUV with his coat open and one hand tucked into his pocket like he had not been ordered to rest by 6 doctors and threatened by 1 nurse. Rain fell beyond the awning. Of course it did. He looked up when she stepped outside. Their eyes met. Everything in her life had changed since the first time he opened his eyes on her trauma table, and yet the dangerous pull between them felt exactly the same. Only now, Elena was not being dragged. She was walking, by choice. "You are supposed to be in bed," she said. "I was. For how long?" He considered lying, wisely chose not to. 20 minutes. Impressive survival instinct. I came to return something. He held out his ring. The black stone caught the hospital lights. Elena looked at it, then at him. I told you. I don't need that. I know. His voice was low. That is why I am not asking you to wear it. She waited. Luca stepped closer, careful, slower than before because his body was still healing. The restraint made him seem more dangerous somehow, less like a storm, more like a man choosing not to destroy the room. This ring made men obey, he said. It made them fear what they thought you were. He placed it in her palm. But you made them listen without it. Elena's fingers closed around the ring. What am I supposed to do with it? Whatever you want. The answer was simple. And because it was simple, she believed him. Elena looked down at the ring. Then she slipped it into her pocket. Not onto her hand. Luca noticed. He accepted it. Something warm moved through her chest. Maybe trust did not arrive like lightning. Maybe it arrived like this, in small moments, when a powerful man did not reach for control. Elena, he said. She looked up. The intensity in his eyes had not softened, but it had changed. It no longer felt like a cage. It felt like a door standing open, dangerous and honest, waiting for her to decide whether to step through. I meant what I said under the cathedral. Her breath caught. He did not look away. I think I loved you before I knew your face. Elena's throat tightened. You understand that's an insane thing to say to someone you met during a shooting? Yes. At least, you're self-aware. Only recently. She almost laughed. Then the emotion in his face stopped her. Luca Moretti, who could command rooms full of killers, looked terrified of one nurse's answer. Elena stepped closer. I don't know what this is, she said. His voice dropped. Neither do I. I don't know how to love someone whose world nearly killed me. I don't know how to love without trying to stand between you and every bullet. That sounds exhausting. It has been. She smiled despite herself. Then she touched his chest lightly, above the bandages. He went perfectly still, not frozen from fear, still from reverence. You don't get to own me, Elena whispered. I know. You don't get to decide for me. I know. You don't get to die dramatically every time you're emotionally overwhelmed. His mouth curved. I will need practice. You'll get practice. His eyes darkened. With you? Elena looked at the rain behind him, the hospital behind her, the city beyond both of them. She thought of Rosalia singing through storms, Claire begging for her child, the names buried, then spoken. The bloodlines men tried to turn into chains. Then she looked back at Luca. With me, she said. Luca exhaled like something inside him had finally unclenched. He did not kiss her. Not yet. That mattered. Instead, he reached for her hand slowly, giving her every second to pull away. She didn't. His fingers closed around hers. Warm, careful, still dangerous. But no longer pretending danger and devotion were the same thing. Behind them the ER doors opened and a nurse called Elena's name. A multi-car accident was coming in. Her shift was not over. Maybe it never really would be. Elena squeezed Luca's hand once and let go. I have work. Luca nodded. I'll wait. She gave him a look. You need rest. I'll rest in the car. Luca, with medical supervision nearby. You are impossible. Yes. She walked back toward the doors. Before entering, she turned. Luca was still watching her. Rainlight behind him. Dark coat moving slightly in the wind. No crown, no throne, no ring on her hand. Just a wounded Mafia king learning how to stand beside a woman who had become something far more dangerous than his queen, her own. And somewhere across the city, as Dante Belanti's empire cracked under daylight, men who once whispered Elena's name in fear began speaking it with something else. Respect. 6 months later, the first snow fell over Chicago, like the city was trying to pretend it had never known blood. Elena Carter stood at the window of her apartment above the old bakery, watching white flakes gather on the fire escape where rain used to strike like warning fingers. The radiator still knocked inside the wall. The floor was still cold in the mornings. The kitchen table still had 2 chairs, but the second chair was no longer kept empty for a ghost. Rosalia's photograph remained on the windowsill, beside a new frame Elena had placed there 2 weeks earlier. Her mother, Claire Rosalia Moretti. The photograph had come from an old Belanti widow who showed up at the hospital one afternoon with trembling hands and a shoebox full of truth. Claire at 19, laughing in sunlight. Claire holding flowers outside a church. Claire with Elena as a baby, cheek pressed to her daughter's hair, eyes bright with the terror and joy of someone loving something the world wanted to steal. Elena had stared at those pictures for an hour without speaking. Then she had cried so hard, Luca almost called a doctor. He was still learning the difference between grief and emergency. He stood behind her now, silent, one shoulder leaning against the doorway, black shirt sleeves rolled to his forearms, dark hair still damp from the snow outside. The scars beneath his ribs had healed into pale lines she sometimes touched when she needed to remind herself he had survived. He no longer appeared without warning. That had been one of Elena's rules. Text first. Knock always. No armed men in the hallway unless she asked. Luca had followed all 3 with the seriousness of a man learning a foreign language that mattered more than pride. You're early, Elena said without turning. I waited downstairs for 9 minutes. Why? You said 7 was intense. She smiled faintly. And 9 is normal? I'm adapting. She turned then. He held a paper grocery bag in one hand and a small bakery box in the other. No diamonds? She asked. No. No dramatic security convoy? 1 car. Parked 2 blocks away. No blood on your shirt? He looked down as if checking. Elena laughed softly. That sound still made him pause. Not because he was shocked anymore, because he listened to it like proof. He crossed the room and set the bag on the counter. Inside were oranges, coffee, pasta, fresh basil, and the tea Rosalia used to drink. Elena looked at it. Her chest tightened. Luca noticed. I can take it back. No, she said quietly. Leave it. He nodded once. No questions. No pushing. That was the part she trusted most. Powerful men always wanted to fix pain quickly, because they could not bear feeling useless beside it. Luca had been the worst of them once. He would have bought buildings, hunted names, threatened silence into shape if he thought it would stop her hurting. Now he stood still and let grief breathe. Elena opened the bakery box. Cannoli. Mjoho. Messy, imperfect, dusted unevenly with powdered sugar. She raised an eyebrow. Did you make these? Luca's expression did not change. No. Did you threaten someone into making them? No. Did you watch someone make them with terrifying intensity? A pause. Yes? Elena smiled. He stepped closer, slowly enough that she could decide what happened next. She let him. Outside, the snow thickened. Inside, the apartment smelled of coffee, basil, old wood, and winter. For the first time in years, it smelled like a home someone might return to. The world beyond the bakery had not become gentle. Dante Belanti was alive, imprisoned in a federal facility under charges too public for his friends to erase. His trial had become a slow spectacle of corruption, murder, falsified police reports, and old family money dragged under fluorescent courtroom lights. He still sent messages sometimes, not directly, never close enough for Luca to touch. A phrase passed through a lawyer, a symbol left on a courthouse step, a name whispered to frighten a witness. Elena never answered. That was Luca's favorite part. Not because she was silent, because her silence was no longer fear. The Belanti house had fractured into 3 factions, then settled under a council watched closely by Serafina Vasto, who somehow made mercy feel more intimidating than murder. Matteo Moretti had stepped back from public power, though Elena doubted men like Matteo ever truly stepped away from anything. He spent more mornings than expected at an old church near Little Italy, lighting candles for Rosalia, Claire, and the son he had nearly lost to the same war twice. And Luca changed slowly. Not in ways stories made easy. He still carried a gun. He still had enemies. His voice could still turn a room cold, but he had learned to stop before commanding Elena, to ask before deciding, to stand beside a door without blocking it. Some days that effort looked natural. Some days it looked like war. Elena loved him more on the difficult days because that was when she knew it was a choice. He watched her now while she brewed coffee. "What?" she asked. "I like seeing you here." "In my own kitchen? Safe." Elena poured water into the machine. "Safe is complicated." "I know." She looked at him. He did know. That was the difference. Safety was not locked gates or armed cars or men bleeding in stairwells. Safety was a door she could open herself. A truth no one hid to protect her. A love that did not ask her to disappear inside it. Luca reached into his coat pocket and took out the black signet ring. Elena's eyes dropped to it. He had not asked her to wear it again. Not once. The ring had become something else between them. Not a claim, not a crown. A relic of the night everything began. Sometimes it rested in his pocket. Sometimes in her kitchen drawer. Sometimes on Rosalia's windowsill beside the photographs. A symbol waiting to be redefined. Luca placed it on the table between them. "I had it changed," he said. Elena frowned slightly. She picked it up. The black stone was the same, but the crest had been altered. The old Moretti mark remained, smaller now, cut beside a tiny rose and a thin line of script, so delicate she had to turn it toward the light. RBM. C. R-I-M. Acei. Rosalia. Claire. Elena. No ownership. Memory. Her throat closed. "Luca, if you hate it, I'll destroy it." She looked up at him. Of course he would. That was the terrible, beautiful thing. He would burn an heirloom centuries old if she said it hurt her. Elena closed her fingers around the ring. "I don't hate it." His breath changed. She set it back on the table, not on her finger. His eyes followed the choice. Then he nodded. Still learning. Still trying. Still there. A knock sounded at the door. Luca turned instantly. Elena gave him a look. He stopped halfway through, reaching beneath his coat. "Progress," she said. "I didn't draw. Gold star." She opened the door. Maya stood outside wearing a red scarf, holding a bottle of wine and a stack of hospital forms. "No guns?" Maya asked, glancing past Elena at Luca. Luca said, "Not visible." Maya stared. Elena sighed. "We're working on humor too." Maya stepped inside, kissed Elena's cheek, and handed her the forms. Final paperwork for the clinic. Elena looked down. The Elena Carter Emergency Relief Fund. A small foundation first, then a clinic wing, then maybe something larger if Serafina kept terrifying donors into generosity. It was meant for women with no family to call, nurses drowning in debt, immigrants afraid to report violence, children whose records had been changed by people more powerful than their mothers. Elena had refused to name it after herself. Rosalia had hidden to save her. Now her name would open doors. Luca watched as Elena signed the final page. His expression was quiet, unreadable to anyone else. Elena knew it now. Pride made him silent. Grief made him still. Love made him careful. Maya stayed for coffee. She teased Luca until he looked faintly betrayed by Elena's lack of intervention. Matteo arrived later, with a coat dusted in snow and a small paper bag of chestnuts from a street vendor Rosalia had once loved. He stood awkwardly in Elena's apartment, a former king, uncertain where to place his hands among family photographs and cheap kitchen chairs. Elena did not forgive him all at once. She might never forgive him completely, but she gave him coffee. For Matteo, That seemed enough to nearly break him. He stood before Rosalia's photograph for a long time. Then he touched 2 fingers to his lips and placed them gently against the frame. "I'm sorry," he whispered. Elena looked away to give him privacy. Luca did not. Father and son stood in the same small room with a lifetime of ghosts between them. Then Luca crossed to Matteo and handed him a cup. No words, just coffee. It was not forgiveness, but it was a beginning. That evening, after Maya left and Matteo's car disappeared into the snow, Elena and Luca walked to the hospital together. She had a night shift. He had promised not to wait outside for 12 hours. He would fail. She already knew, but maybe only by a little. The city glowed under fresh snow, softened at the edges, the sidewalks silver beneath streetlights. Luca walked on the street side without making a production of it. Elena noticed anyway. At the hospital entrance, she stopped. The automatic doors slid open behind her, spilling warm light across the snow. This was where he had arrived bleeding. This was where she had pressed her hands into his wounds. This was where the song escaped her mouth and resurrected a past she had not known she carried. Luca seemed to remember too. His gaze moved from the doors to her face. "Do you ever wish I had never come in that night?" he asked. Elena considered lying. He deserved honesty more. "Sometimes," she said. His expression did not flinch, but something in his eyes lowered. Elena stepped closer. "And sometimes I think you were always coming. Maybe not you exactly, but the truth, the past, the names, my mother, my grandmother. All of it was already at the door." Snow gathered in his dark hair. She brushed one flake from his temple. "You just bled dramatically enough to get my attention." His mouth curved faintly. "I'll try to be subtler next time." "There will not be a next time." "Of course. You said that too quickly. I believed you while saying it." She shook her head, smiling despite herself. Then the smile softened. "I don't wish you away, Luca." His eyes held hers. The city moved around them. Ambulances, traffic, snow, life continuing. Because life always had the audacity to continue after devastation. Elena reached into her coat pocket and took out the altered ring. Luca went very still. She took his hand and placed the ring in his palm. Then she closed his fingers around it. "Keep it," she said. His throat moved. "Elena, not as a claim, not as permission, not as a promise that I'll become what your world expects. I know, when I'm ready, I'll decide what it means for me." He looked at their joined hands, then back at her. "And until then, you keep showing up. Text first. Knock always. No deciding for me." His voice was low, and no dying dramatically. That one especially. He leaned closer, stopping just before touching her, asking without words. Elena answered by rising onto her toes and kissing him. It was not a desperate kiss. Not like the cathedral, where everything had tasted of smoke and fear and almost loss. This was slower, warmer. A promise not of forever, because forever was too easy to say and too hard to live. A promise of tomorrow, of trying, of choosing again when morning came. Luca kissed her like a man afraid to hold too tightly and unwilling to let the moment vanish. When she pulled back, his forehead rested lightly against hers. For once, neither of them needed to speak. Then her pager went off. Elena closed her eyes. "Of course." Luca's mouth brushed into something like a smile. "Go save someone." She stepped back, breath unsteady. "You go home and rest." "I'll go home, Luca, and attempt rest. Better." She walked toward the ER doors. Just before they closed, she turned. He stood beneath the falling snow, black coat, scarred hands, ring hidden in his palm, watching her not like a man watching something he owned, like a man watching something free. Elena smiled once. Then she stepped into the light. Behind her, the storm continued. Ahead of her, monitors beeped, Nurses shouted. Patients cried. Life broke open and demanded her hands. Elena Carter tied back her hair, clipped on her badge, and walked into the emergency room. Not hidden, not claimed, not alone. And somewhere deep in her memory, Rosalia's song no longer sounded like a warning. It sounded like home,